From the moment Allied planners approved the invasion of Guadalcanal, they understood that they were stepping into uncertainty. No American force had attempted a major amphibious assault against a determined enemy since the beginning of the war. The Pacific was vast, hostile, and dominated, at least in reputation, by a Japanese military that had not yet suffered a decisive defeat on land. Guadalcanal was not chosen because it was easy, but because it was necessary. A half-completed Japanese airfield threatened Allied supply routes between the United States and Australia, and allowing it to become operational would have shifted the balance of the war in the South Pacific. When American Marines landed in August 1942, they encountered surprisingly light resistance. The airfield was seized quickly, almost anticlimactically. But the silence was deceptive. Japanese forces were already preparing to respond, and they did so with confidence. They believed the Americans lacked jungle experience, lacked discipline, and most importantly, lacked the will to endure sustained combat under extreme conditions. Japanese doctrine emphasized aggressive counterattack, especially at night, and Guadalcanal would be the place where this belief was tested to its limits. The island itself immediately asserted dominance over both armies. Dense jungle restricted movement to narrow trails. Rivers flooded without warning. Heat and humidity drained strength relentlessly. Equipment rusted. Food spoiled. Wounds became infected within hours. Men who survived combat often fell to malaria, dysentery, or exhaustion. Guadalcanal did not distinguish between victor and victim. It punished all who entered it. Japanese counterattacks began almost immediately. Small units probed American defenses, testing reactions and seeking weaknesses. These early engagements revealed something unexpected. American troops did not panic. They held their ground. They responded with disciplined fire, artillery support, and coordinated defense. The assumption that Americans would break under pressure began to erode. As Japanese forces escalated their efforts, they committed larger formations to frontal assaults against prepared positions. These attacks were conducted with bravery and determination, often under cover of darkness, but they were met by machine guns, mortars, and artillery firing from fixed defensive lines. The terrain that once favored surprise now funneled attackers into predictable avenues of approach. Casualties mounted rapidly. Behind the front lines, a different battle was unfolding. Japanese supply efforts relied on nighttime naval runs, later known as the Tokyo Express, to deliver food, ammunition, and reinforcements. These missions were dangerous and inefficient. Heavy equipment could not be transported in sufficient quantities. Every successful run delivered only a fraction of what was needed. Every failed run meant starvation and helplessness on the island. In contrast, American forces gradually stabilized their supply situation. Henderson Field became operational, allowing aircraft to defend the surrounding seas during daylight hours. This air superiority transformed the campaign. Japanese ships could no longer move freely. Supply lines were disrupted. Reinforcements were delayed or destroyed before reaching shore. Control of the air translated directly into control of the battle. The psychological toll on Japanese soldiers intensified. Orders continued to demand offensive action, yet resources dwindled. Attacks became less coordinated, less supported, and more desperate. Soldiers advanced knowing that retreat was unacceptable and reinforcement unlikely. Entire units were lost in single engagements, erased without achieving meaningful results. American troops, though suffering heavily themselves, began to sense the shift. They were still exhausted, still sick, still fearful, but they were holding. Each failed Japanese assault reinforced the belief that the enemy could be defeated. Confidence grew slowly, not through victory parades or speeches, but through survival. The battle reached a critical phase in the fall of 1942, when Japanese command committed its remaining strength to a decisive offensive. This effort combined ground assaults with naval action, aiming to overwhelm American defenses and neutralize Henderson Field. The resulting battles, both on land and at sea, were among the most violent of the entire Pacific War. Naval engagements were fought at close range in darkness, with ships firing until they were crippled or sunk. On land, Japanese infantry attacked repeatedly despite devastating losses. The offensive failed. Japanese forces suffered catastrophic casualties that could not be replaced. Senior officers were killed. Morale collapsed. The realization spread quietly but irreversibly. Guadalcanal could not be retaken. The American position was too strong, their supply situation too secure, and their industrial capacity too vast. Starvation became the defining condition of the Japanese garrison. Food rations were reduced to almost nothing. Soldiers scavenged for roots, insects, and leaves. Disease spread unchecked. Medical care ceased to exist. Men died not in battle, but alone in the jungle, too weak to move. The ideals of sacrifice and honor offered no protection against hunger. American forces, though far from comfortable, existed in a fundamentally different reality. Supplies continued to arrive. Reinforcements rotated in. Wounded soldiers were evacuated. Medical treatment improved survival rates dramatically. The difference was not bravery, but infrastructure. By late 1942, Japanese command made the decision to evacuate Guadalcanal. It was not framed as defeat, but it was understood as such by those who ordered it. Over several nights, surviving troops were withdrawn under cover of darkness. Thousands were saved, but tens of thousands had already been lost. When American patrols discovered abandoned positions, the campaign ended quietly. There was no surrender ceremony, no dramatic finale. The jungle reclaimed the battlefield almost immediately. Bodies decomposed. Equipment rusted. The island returned to silence. Yet the impact of Guadalcanal resonated far beyond its shores. Strategically, it marked the permanent shift of initiative in the Pacific War. Japan would fight defensively from that point forward, reacting rather than advancing. The myth of Japanese invincibility was destroyed. Allied forces gained confidence, experience, and momentum. More importantly, Guadalcanal revealed the true nature of modern industrial warfare. Victory was not achieved through courage alone, nor through tactical brilliance in isolation. It was achieved through logistics, production, coordination, and endurance. The side that could sustain operations, replace losses, and adapt faster would prevail. For Japanese soldiers who survived, Guadalcanal was a moment of awakening. Many realized the war could not be won, even if it continued. For American forces, it was proof that the enemy could be defeated under the harshest conditions imaginable. The war would continue for years. It would consume entire cities and countless lives. But its direction was set in the jungles of Guadalcanal. There, modern war revealed itself without illusion, brutal, impersonal, and decided not by belief, but by capacity. Guadalcanal did not end the war. It defined how the war would be fought.